Hey guys, BJ here, back to talk to you today about the new balance patch for the March season. And guys, yeah, this is a really interesting one. I'm actually really looking forward to getting into this with you. The patch is now live. I've not had a chance to play yet, but I have been reading through the changes, and I really wanted to kind of like just think out loud with you guys and just kind of share some initial thoughts. So let's take a look. Okay, so first and foremost, I think they recognise that the changes that they made to the Orkz weren't enough last season. So what they really focus on is three things in this patch. No, they have not changed Astra Militarum. The reinforcement literally only just ended. So generally speaking, they like to give it a month before they touch those types of things. So what they focused on is nerfing the Genestealer Cults and buffing the lesser played cards in both the Goff Orks and the Hive Fleet Leviathan, aka Tyranids. So let's jump in and take a look. Okay, so first of all, the Genestealer Cults. We've got Cut Them Off. So this is the card that plays 2 of the 3 improvised barricades into your enemy hand, and then it draws a card. Exactly the same, they've just got rid of the no longer draws a card. Now, I personally don't think that this is a huge nerf. I think that, like, the cycling thing is good, but it's not why you play the card, right? Like, the synergies of why you play this card are still there. You're still talking about your opponent having to spend 6 energy to get rid of those 2 sabotage cards, and it costing you 3 still. So I still think that that card in a vacuum is still very good. But it's good that they did try and nerf it a little bit. I don't know if it's the right nerf, because it's hard, but yeah. So it is a nerf, but it's not like the end of the world. Now, a Trap Sprung, they've gone up from 5 to 6. This is obviously the payoff, the one that does 3 damage for every stratagem that's in your opponent's hand. I think this is a reasonable change. Like, it's still going to work. It's still going to do the same thing. I think what it does mean is that, like, sometimes you have these turns where your opponent, or if you're the GSC player, where you want to try and put some things in the hand that turn and then play Trap Sprung. And I think that's where moving it up to 6 energy will impact it slightly. I don't think this is a massive change. I don't think this changes ultimately the strategy of Trap Sprung, and I think that costing 6 will be fine overall. So it's quite a minor tweak. Now, next up, Underground Network. Now, Underground Network is quite a pivotal card in a sabotage deck. Why? Because once you play that card, it affects for the rest of the game the cost of the opponent's sabotage cards, right? The cost it takes to get rid of them from hand. So it's a huge card, and basically that's now going up from 4 to 5. I think this card. I think this is. I think this is a good change, and I think that. But it's a big change, right? It does fundamentally shift now what's going on with the sabotage decks. Ultimately, what I think is going to happen is the sabotage decks are still going to be very powerful in a control meta. Like, if we're in slower metas, it's still a very powerful deck. But I think the problem it's going to have now is it is slowed down quite dramatically. So the aggro decks will just be able to get in and the tempo decks will be able to get in and just finish you off before all this stuff starts to kind of like pay off. And in a way, that's kind of like what it should be like, right? It is a kind of like control combo type of approach. So I think this change to Underground Network overall is probably a good thing, to be honest. Now, the next one I am a bit sad about, the Rogue Informant going up from 1 to 2. And I am a bit sad about this. And guys, like, this card is super, super good. It was so good for 1E. Obviously, I can't argue about the fact that it's gone up to 2E, because, you know, in terms of what the card does, like, it totally makes sense that it would cost 2E. The reason I'm sad about it is because we've lost a 1 energy stratagem. And what I love most about this card is just having other 1 energy stratagems, right? So I often play the other 1 energy stratagems, and there's lots of combos in, like, artifice type combos that you can play, things with Nexus and stuff like that. So having 1 or the 6-drop, the Saboteur, right? So having those like 1-drop stratagems, I was just so excited for that. And so that's the thing I'm most sad about, is just that we're losing 2 of those. But in terms of what the card does itself in a vacuum, then it's still very much worth it for 2. What you might see with the Rogue Informant though is that it might just become a little bit more specialised. Like before, I think it could just go in every deck, but yeah, now it might just be a little bit more. You're looking for something a bit more specific. All right, Master Outrider. This is the Warlord ability of our new Warlord Lasker Zanari, and it basically says the exact same thing as it used to do, except for it doesn't give +1 range attack anymore. So no longer does this Warlord do 3 attack with Slayer. When you've got things like Sniper and Slayer, remember Sniper means that if you would kill the unit, it doesn't attack back, right? So when you could going from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, it's actually a massive deal when you've got abilities like Sniper and Slayer. And what was happening with this guy is that basically no one could play anything that was small on the board, right? Whereas I think changing that from 3 to 2 is actually a really big change. It's still a decent like effect, but I think it's where it should be. I think the +1 range was just too much. It's just too much. We're just tipping this guy over the edge. So overall, I actually think that these are pretty decent changes. They've definitely been nerfed in terms of power level. There's no doubt about that. Mainly because of the Zanari's ability and the speed at which Sabotage is now going to operate. It's going to operate in a different level, a different speed. And I say I think it'll still be powerful in a control meta, but I actually just think that what we're going to see in the short term at least is a massive drop off in Sabotage. And I don't think the kind of all-out Sabotage, all-in Sabotage deck is going to be the best thing you can do with Genestealers anymore. It still won't be a bad thing, but I just don't think it'll be the best thing anymore. So yeah, overall, I'm fairly happy with these changes, to be honest. Now, one thing I did forget to say at the beginning, which I just want to shout out, I want to just say like a kind of a well done to EG, because one thing that's different about this balance patch is this has come out on Thursday, right? Now the new season started on Monday. Obviously in an ideal world the new patch would come out at the start of the season, but one of the things that a lot of people have been complaining about, including myself, is just that by the time the balance patch comes out, people have already abused last season's broken decks and they end up with a ridiculously high MMR score. And so this coming out on a Thursday, if we were talking about seasons past, it wouldn't come out till next Monday, next Tuesday. So I actually think well done to EG for like getting this out much earlier, and I think it means that this season, I checked the leaderboard and the highest overall score was like 2,900. So I think that means that this season's going to be much fairer and much more interesting. Alright, so let's move on. So the Goff Orks. Okay, so what we've got is Unstable. Now, Unstable is a trait that is mainly on vehicles, but it is on some infantry as well. And the description is, when the unit dies, deal 1 to 3 damage to a random unit. Now, it used to be a random friendly unit. This is an absolutely huge difference, like, in what this ability does. Now, I'm so happy to see this because Unstable was one of the worst mechanics in the game, and it held back on a lot of the kind of potential creativity for the Orc faction. They just didn't cut it. Now, this, to me, completely unlocks the vehicles and a lot of the Unstable mechanics, but in a way that's still very, very true to the kind of Orc identity, right? Like the idea that what this is going to do now is it's going to be random, like it could hurt you, it could hurt them, but that's kind of Orcish, right? So I kind of like that. It's in line with the IP, and I think this is pretty cool. This is also going to lead to some pretty amazing things, because overall, like the things that have Unstable tend to be well statted. They tend to be slightly better in terms of like the health ratio against opposing units. So now you're going to basically build decks that have a kind of health ratio advantage, which makes me think that Ghazghkull could be really good with this, because obviously he himself has 40 health, and when everything's just randomly getting extra damage, he could come out on top there. So I think this is a really interesting. Also think about things like flankers. So a flanker comes on, it trades with something, dies, the 1 to 3 damage can now hit enemy Warlord. So in a sense, what you've got here is flanking units that can deal damage to Warlord on the turn that they come on. That in itself is absolutely Obviously, it can hit your own warlords as well, giving you that kind of orcish uncertainty. But I'm super excited to test Unstable. I think this is a really fun change, and yeah, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, this really does unlock a lot of units. Next up, the Orc Boy. Now, the Orc Boy has now got Tide 1, should I say. So basically, if we just look at the Orcs, here we go. Yeah, so the Orc Boy is this, and basically he was the basic card. I'm saying basic a lot, aren't I? But this guy used to just be as you see it, but without the Tide. Now what it's actually does, it's much more orcish in the sense of just by giving it Tide 1. I actually think this is a great card now, and the 3 health for 2 has always been good anyway. You know, you imagine playing this with something like Gazgul, you can have 4, or if you draw him off of Gruk, he comes out with 4 melee, and then the Tide will also have 4 melee. So I think the Orc Boy is now very good. It's going to play very nicely into like Horde type approaches, the Green Horde being a card, a really good stratagem, and yeah, Orc Boy is going to start seeing his way into decks. Really excited about that change. Next up, you got the Slugger Boy. Description changed. Tide 1 gain +1 melee for each friendly Slugger Boy. So basically, what we're talking about here. On the Slugger Boy, yeah. So when you play the Slugger Boy, he's always had Tide 1. But what it's saying is gain 1 for each other friendly Slugger Boy. So the first one that you play, I don't think will get +1, the way I read this. The second one that you play, though, the Tide, will get a +1 buff. So, and then of course, like if you've got multiple Slugger Boys, like if you've got the other version of the other card, potentially you can end up playing 4 Slugger Boys in one turn, especially when you've done Horde, and they'll basically each start to give each other like +1 for each one that you play. So it's very good. Like it's mainly just going to be +1, right? But because you're only going to have 1 Slugger Boy in hand at any time. But occasionally it's going to go off and gives you more combo potential. Pretty nice. Next up, we got the Rocket Boy, and the health's increased from 4 to 5, and the Unstables increased from 2 to 3. I think this makes this guy a really solid 4-drop now. Nice. Looking forward to playing that. And again, I think this card's going to be good in like things that give you, either discount or ability to kind of flank on the turn you come on. Particularly is going to be very good. Now the Killer Can is probably one of the most useless things here. It now has a mob effect, which is basically gain +1 melee this turn. I mean, the Killer Can the Killer Can isn't played, right? But it's not played because it's got poor melee. The Killer Can, I can find it. Here it is. It's like mob. Gain 1 this turn. Okay. So if you've basically got a horde of stuff, then a horde of orcs or grots or whatever, and they all keep attacking, and then this one is the last to attack, then it could obviously end up really high. So it could end up as a really good finisher. The other thing is, like, this guy's stats have always been like pretty insane, but obviously held back by Unstable. But now the way that Unstable works could actually open up windows for Killer Can being a pretty decent 5-drop. So, oh yeah, I'm kind of interested to see Killer Can. I could see it being like one of the kind of rare, or should I say few top-end expensive units in a Horde type Orc deck as well. So yeah, really good change. Let's see how that lands. Next up we got the Storm Boy Strike. Exactly the same as it always was, except for you basically get an extra Storm Boy. So this is like a counter to go wide boards. It has been played in one meta when it was very wide, like Junith type metas or the Astra Militarum that we're going to see this season. So I think this is pretty good now, but obviously you aren't going to need to be running things like the Front the Gits. Alright, so you're going to have to play this with it as well, so you're looking at like 8 energy, and then all of a sudden you get basically an AoE. So it's okay, like it's not kind of like mind-blowingly good or anything, but it's definitely okay. It's definitely a viable option if you're trying to counter go wide metas. Next up, the Deathcopter. That's the same. It just says that rally other Deathcopters deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So the first one you play won't do anything, I don't think. But once you put the second one down, it will do 2 damage. So it's just adding a little bit of a damage thing. And the stats were already pretty decent on the Death Cots, especially because it's a flyer. So yeah, nice, welcome change. The Battle Wagon, basically lower the cost of your infantry in your hand by 3. It used to lower the cost by 2. So cool. I think that is a really good card. I think what you're going to see now with the Battle Wagon is again, in some of the kind of like the heavy infantry horde decks, this is like a vehicle. This is not a vehicle in a vehicle build. This is a vehicle in an infantry build. And actually, I could see you running like 2 of these at the top end now to really capitalize on that. Because actually, reducing the cost by 3 instead of 2, it's actually a massive difference. Because in terms of how many orcs could you then spit out if you've got -3, there's a lot of orcs that cost 3 less. So yeah, I actually think that's quite a huge difference. The gun wagon just got +1 health. It's gone up from 8 to 9. Well, yeah, good, needed it, but I still don't think that's a very good card, if I'm honest, and I don't think see any play. And then the last one was the Mega Blasted Death Copter, which just basically says blast 5, create a grot bomb in hand. Kind of nice in the sense that the rally effect, you know, putting that kind of like burn into your hand. Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it's like a potential control unit, but it also on rally gives you burn. I don't know how good it's going to be, but it is an interesting combination, sure. And again, I'm just happy to see them making some changes to unplayed units. Overall, I do think that the Orks are going to be pretty fun to build around this season, and I think one of the key things really is the unstable. I think that's absolutely the highlight of this change. And yeah, looking forward to testing some Orks. Next up, we got the Hive Fleet Leviathan. Now, the Swarmlord, guys, has gone down from 40 to 35, and that is huge. I do not like this change, but I understand it. Like, I don't like it because it's very anti-IP, right? Like, if any warlords are going to have more health, if they're going to be 40 health, it's going to be the big giant beasts like the Swarmlord, right? Like, I just think like it's really anti. It's just really it's just not good for the IP. It's not a good. It's just not a good look. Like 35 health for a Swarmlord doesn't make much sense lore-wise. Like the lore's bad for that. But in terms of the gameplay and the in-game, I can understand it because Swarmlord's been so good for so long, and people really didn't want them to change the 3 melee. It's something that's really unique to him, so I'm glad they didn't change that. And ultimately, what they've gone with is 35 health. Fair enough. Like I say, it's not the change I wanted to see. But it probably is about time that they did something to Swarmlord, so bit of a nerf there for the Swarmlord. Now the Neurothrope, on the other hand, has gained Synapse. To me, this is like super cool. I am really looking forward to trying this. Like, having Synapse on a Warlord is a massive deal, guys. Bear in mind, a lot of stratagems do say that they only target a troop. So even though he's got Synapse, it doesn't mean you'll be able to play all of the stratagems on him, but being able to do that, being able to just put one unit down that isn't even a Synapse unit, like a Carnifex or something, and then playing a strat on this guy, I think that's amazing. Like, I think this is, and obviously super in theme, super on point with the lore. This guy should be Synapse. I mean, yeah, brilliant. I think Neurothrope's going to be a star. I can't wait to try him out. Now the Psychophage is interesting. They've lowered the stats to 225, and they've just changed the rally effect to gain 2 melee and 2 range. It used to be gain 1 melee and 1 range, and it had a 3/3. So basically what it's saying is, like, if you've only got the enemy warlord, who usually is going to be damaged, right, it'll come out at this pretty much the same stats, like still be a 4/4, but it will get +1 health. which it used to be 6 health anyway, so they've nerfed it. So in other words, the stats will be the same if it's on the Warlord. However, if there's a damaged unit, then this guy's going to be better than he used to be. And so, honestly, I think you could definitely see Psychophages being played in the 5-drop slots. Next up, we've got the... I can never say this one. Maleceptor. This guy was always cool. Playing a shield on a random friendly unit whenever you play whenever you play Artifice. Let's just go and look at the card, actually. Here it is. So, yeah, so Synapse, first of all. Great, so another viable Synapse creature. And it said Artifice, give a shield to a random friendly unit. Now, the stats on this thing were really, really poor. And going up to 7/6 is huge. I really like this card now. I mean, it's still, you know, it's a 7-drop, right? And you do need to play something with it. Another one that I think works well in Neurothroat because of the 1 Warlord power. I could definitely see us running this. Yeah, I'm excited to try this card, to be honest. I don't know that it's going to be like become an S tier card because it's so expensive, but I'm definitely excited, and it's much more reasonable. It used to be a 4/5, and now it's a 7/6, so it's just a much bigger beast. The Bestial Rage, it's gone from being the most useless card in the game that used to give +8 to 1 unit to now it's give +4 to all friendly troops. It's only troops. It could be good. It could be good, like in as an alternative win con for a Tervigon build or a Terror build in particular. +4 on all friendly troops is no joke, but it is only troops, not the units. The Warlord doesn't get it. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to make it into the meta, but it's certainly more interesting than what it was. The Apex Predator, the cost is now lowered from 5 to 4, and the description's changed to give invulnerable and +3 range to a friendly unit this turn. It's still only this turn, and obviously you can benefit from putting that on for example, a Neurothroat, because it says friendly unit, it doesn't say troop, so you could put it on the Neurothroat and use his new Synapse to kind of put that on other units. Basically, you can have a really deadly swing turn. So I definitely think it's got some viability there, particularly in like a mid-range build where you've got bigger units down and stuff, but I don't know. Do I think it's going to make it in? Possibly 1 unit. The Termagant Brood has just got this ability that basically whenever Swarm is triggered, deal 1 damage to a friendly unit. Now, I think this is pretty cool in Tervigon decks, where you have built up loads of swarms, you then discount them all with overwhelming, whatever it's called, where you play all your stuff out for free, and each time you swarm up, you're getting a +1 ping damage from this guy. So I definitely could see him play. He will be played in those decks just for that role, but it's a very niche role. It's not going to be in every Tyranid deck. Now, the Exocene, as the melee increased from 4 to 5, the health has increased from 9 to 10, and it's changed to Blast 5, give vulnerable 2 to an enemy and adjacent troops. Now, let's just quickly look at the Exocene. I really do like the vulnerable thing. I think that's the thing that is super cool here. The stats are already pretty good. Giving it a rally effect, it actually does something on the board, is massive. And +2 to vulnerable to an enemy troop and adjacent troops. Now, it is troops, right? It's not the Warlord. So, like, you're probably not going to hit 3 troops very often with this. Yeah. It's going to be very rare that you get that kind of thing. But it doesn't matter, because even just like hitting 2, it's still something. And Tyranids do struggle a little bit with this. They don't have sort of hard removal and that type of stuff. So, you know, giving vulnerable 2, and then you can imagine like turn 9 playing this with a Neurothroat, and then you can ping something for 1 damage, which would be 3 damage, and obviously the Neurothroat can attack himself for 2, plus this would be 4 damage. So yeah, I could see this being used again, but I don't think it's like... I don't think it's going to make it into the meta decks, to be honest, but I can definitely see it being more usable, and that's definitely overall a good thing, right? And then last but not least, we have the aerial seeding. Lower the cost from 2 to 0. Change the description to choose a 2-cost Leviathan troop and deploy it. Now this thing used to cost 2. So this is the card we're talking about. This comes with. The stats haven't changed. But the aerial seeding now is 0. It used to be 2 cost. And it used to basically put 2 random things in your hand. Now it's actually choosing just 1 2 cost, but it's putting it straight into play. This is a really good ability. The problem is, just look at the 2 drops, right? Yeah, these are the 2 drops. Now, putting the Node Beast straight into play is pretty good. Putting the Sport straight into play is okay. What I'm not sure about with a Hormagaunt, for example, is, if I go here, when this card is played from hand, you can play it again up to 4 times. So, because it's not played from hand, the Tide ability won't work, so you're just basically getting 1 Termagant. Stranded Termagant's terrible, and 1 normal Termagant's terrible as well. So, really, you're kind of like looking at a 2 out of 5, like a 40% chance of getting something good. Hormagaunt's like, I mean, it's pretty bad getting 1. Not the end of the world, but it's pretty bad. And these 2 are useless. So overall, I feel like that card is, it would be amazing actually if it wasn't for the fact that the 2 drops just aren't very, very good. So yeah, guys, overall, I think we are going to be looking at quite an interesting season, right? Because we're not just going to be hit by sabotage left, right, and center. I still think Astra Militarum are going to be tier 1 and very powerful. They didn't get touched. But that said, I think the Orks are going to be, it's going to be really interesting to see if there's any new archetypes that pop up with the Orks. And similarly with the Hive Fleet Leviathan, you know, is the newer threat good enough to cut it with these changes? I don't know, but we shall certainly see. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. That's everything from me. Take it easy, and I'll catch you in the next one.